Let me say it this way. If Europe is not making money out of energy, it's really its own fault because, as I said before, we buy a lot of fossil fuels instead of seeing how can we substitute fossil fuels. But then it's not smart to buy everything from elsewhere, right? And then those spoils go elsewhere. So I think we need to put our own single market to much better use than we currently do. I've just been through the experience of having tried to scale clean energy companies, clean tech startups in the last 6 years. And I am sorry to say that despite Green Deal, despite Next Generation EU, despite the EIB being a climate bank, nothing was able to scale here. And this is where I think it's really a moment of reckoning for Europe, because if I look, for instance, at Northvolt, this was actually pretty good industrial policy. We came to batteries pretty late, but I think we could have made it work if things had just worked out better. But if I look at it from a policy planning perspective, it wasn't bad. It was basically a good entrepreneur, Peter Carlson. I mean, maybe in hindsight, not so good, but at least had the ambition to build out a European battery industry in Europe. We lined up the offtake. There were billions of euros in contracts waiting for Northvolt once they produce these batteries. We relaxed state aid policy so that they could also get subsidies. They raised more than 15 billion euros, so it was not peanuts. We still couldn't do it. To this day, there is no serious deliberation here or understanding in Brussels what happened here. So if we do policy and we spend all this money, but we never turn around and actually try to learn, then that's a missed opportunity and frankly a waste of money. Now the Commission came forward with yet another battery strategy, but let's look at the realities. I mean, there's not a single European company in the global top 10 when it comes to batteries. A single company, CATL, has more than 40% of the global market share. Their biggest competitor is BYD, which is, of course, also another Chinese company. So my question is, what have we been doing? You know, and meanwhile telling us we're the climate champions. No, I mean, the way you decarbonize is not just through doing less, it's also through these new technologies. Because if I look at the global south, they need abundant and affordable energy. You know, we could have been at the forefront of this had we done things differently. So I think profound mistakes were made, but it's not too late. For instance, heat. So we use a lot of energy to produce heat in industrial processes. Then that heat just evaporates. That's a waste, right? So what if we could capture that heat, if we could use that heat, if we could repurpose that heat? Why are we not looking at sort of opportunities in the energy system where we could produce new technologies, scale up new companies, or work with existing companies and really try to be a leader and build out new markets? I just don't understand why that is so hard. I go around Europe, I meet amazing startups with really world-class technology. Why is it so hard to pay attention, to scout for this, and then to try to give them an opportunity to actually grow in this market, which remains way too fragmented? By the way, not just in terms of the difficulty of scaling hardware across the EU, but also in terms of its own capital market, which is completely fragmented and bifurcated. So if we had a liquid capital market, if we had opportunities to really scale across borders, if we had a public sector that paid attention to the next generation of clean technologies, things would change. You alone cannot succeed unless the EU at large succeeds. So I understand your frustration, but it means it's important to engage with the EU. It's important to understand that only the scale that the EU can provide can really help Estonia and Europe to withstand the forces, the geopolitical winds that we are feeling from China, from the United States, and in general, a very, very dangerous situation. Also, of course, Russia being a neighbor of Estonia. I said earlier today in a speaking engagement, if I look at the EU, I mean, it's, I think, almost fair to say we're dealing a little bit with a broken sort of operating system. So we keep trying to fine-tune a little bit here and there, but no one is able to hit the reboot button. And this is where I say we need to think of certain sort of potential game changers that can really bring about, or at least start, that journey of renewal that is so ostensibly needed. One way of doing so that I have advocated for a long time is what I call coalitions of the willing. So not wait for the EU to get everyone around the table and get complete consensus, because on more issues than not, that is impossible these days, but is to really move forward. I would have always encouraged the Baltics to stand up together. You do that quite well, by the way, but maybe the Baltics in collaboration with the Nordics, that would be enough and sizable enough and credible enough, especially in, let's say, digital domains, clean tech domains, in defense domains, to say, we are just moving forward. We're not waiting for all the others. And I think I want to see more of that, and that kind of leadership. I've been hugely disappointed that it's been so difficult to get the Nordics to show up in a more consistent way. Even when they all had social democratic governments, that seemed impossible. But I think we really need to see more of that. And I was delighted that about 3 weeks ago, Mario Draghi also called for these coalitions of the willing. So this is one definite piece of advice I have. Secondly, I think, and this, if I just can mention this very briefly, in my time at the European Commission, I was Director General from 2014 to 2019. Almost everyone in the leadership of the department that I ran, which was the internal think tank and strategy department, was from Central and Eastern Europe. Why? Because the almost unbearable naivete of a lot of Western Europeans, of not seeing what was unfolding there, the progressive dangers that were emanating from Russia. I needed people around me who were clear-eyed about what was happening. And at that time, they were pretty much all from Central and Eastern Europe. We didn't listen to you. To this day, it breaks my heart that those that we knew were most exposed to the risk were almost sort of shoved aside. And that also with regards to, of course, Nord Stream 2, where Central and Eastern Europe was adamant that this was not just an economic project, as the Germans like to portray it, but really a deeply political project. So thank you for ringing the alarm bell, and sorry that we didn't listen. It obviously had catastrophic consequences. The other thing I will say is that I think Central and Eastern Europeans understood much earlier than the West that basically energy was the original security vulnerability. No one in their right mind, could do what the Germans did and basically build up these kind of dependencies. More than 50% of natural gas coming from a country that was clearly becoming increasingly authoritarian and unhinged, frankly, right? So the Germans were warned, they didn't listen, and and we know the consequences.